when it comes to your own development, I'm can assume, I think I know who was behind this, but I understand that in the summers you used to spend a lot of time at camps in California, out in Alberta. Befriended Sidney Crosby and his father. I'm assuming it was through Pat Brisson and
Yeah,
CAA.
yeah, it was kind of funny. Yeah, I got started because I used to do the IMG camps, which was
Okay,
Mike Burnett and Eddie Meal,
yeah,
and then that was in Penticton, not a bad place to be. And my
great
camps
spot.
there. I mean, I'd have like Barahowski was there. I mean, Henrik and Daniel Sedin was there because all the Swedish kids would come over. I had Nicky Schultz to play World Juniors, Robin Regier. I'm really dating myself now. And we had great summers there. And then the guy that helped me when we did that was a guy named Patty Conacher. And we had
Yeah,
fun. Yeah, and Patty would bring his
I know
boat down.
Patty. Yeah,
Yeah,
great
so
guy.
we'd bring our boats. He'd bring his boat down from Saskatchewan, and we'd work 3-4 hours in the morning doing the hockey, and they had an off ice guy, and then we'd take the kids tubing, and like Joel Thornton was there, Danny Cleary. I mean, you name it, they were all there. And then what happened was when Wayne went to Phoenix as the coach, Mike went as the GM, and then Eddie went as the assistant GM. So what happened was they couldn't run their business anymore. So there was a guy that was working for them called JP Barry,
Yeah,
and JP and I became good friends, and he was with them, and then Tom Rich was with Mario Lemieux, and then Mario became an owner, so Tom had to go to him, and he had a young French guy helping him named Pat Brisson. And so what happened is then they amalgamated the Rich group and the IMG group because I think IMG was getting out of the hockey, so they
yeah,
became CAA. So I think JP probably said to Pat, "Well, we have a guy that runs all our camps. I mean, his name's Stan Butler. He's done World Juniors, whatever." So we go out to California, and I always tell the story. The first year we're out there, we it's who's who of hockey. I can't even remember all the names, but they're all CAA. They're all first round picks,
for
whatever.
sure. Yeah,
So there's this 14-year-old kid out there, and I see this guy out there. I said, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "Well, my son's here. He's only 14." And I'm like, I didn't want to say nothing. I'm like, holy Christ! If you're 14 years old, you can go out and skate with these guys. You must be pretty good. So to be honest, the only two adults out there, me or him, right? Like we're out
yeah.
there, and all the kids are out there, and then T.R. Goodman did the off ice, and it
Oh,
was a great. It
really?
was yeah. So it was a
Yeah,
great. And I went on a holiday a few years ago, and I went to see him. So then Anson Carter and those guys were all training with him at the time, and Anson played for me, so it was neat. So I remember the next day I got on the ice, and it was unbelievable. Like, yeah, he was 14 with a bubble, and you know, didn't look 14. He's a young looking kid, but once the puck dropped, man, he was playing against guys that were going to be first rounders, and he was as good as any of them. And I remember Eddie stayed that summer, I think, because he wanted to go on a vacation, and he came out and kind of did our goalies, right?
yeah.
And so what happened is he called Wayne because they're best friends, and yeah, so he called Wayne. He says, "You got to see this kid. He's unbelievable." So Wayne says, "Well, I'll come tomorrow. I'll bring my equipment." And in Gare Joyce's book about Sydney, it's the only practice of my life I've ever been nervous. I mean, Wayne Gretzky's coming on the ice to practice, and I'm like,
Like full gear.
full gear. He shows up in his Mercedes, opens the back like a beer leaguer, grabs his stuff out of the back. And, the only thing different is he came into the coach's office, or whatever, where Eddie and I was, and got dressed. And I said, like, okay, like, how does this work? Wayne, he looked at me, and we knew each other through Eddie. He says, "Stan, just run it like a normal practice." So I ran it, and he was on the ice, and Sid was there. And then, Sid went to his house for lunch afterwards, and that was the big deal, like the trivia question, who ran that practice at the time? So that was me. And then from there, I mean, after that year, I mean, Sid came for a couple more years, and Troy and I became very close. We still are to this day. And it was like, are you going? I'm going. Well, yeah, why don't we just share a room? So after that, we were roommates, Troy and me. Like we were just
Wow,
roommates
that's
for the
wild.
summer. And we did this. So I'll tell you a funny story. So I did some TSN stuff because
Yeah.
I got to know Bob Nicholson, so he had me do some of the properties. So I go to Bathurst, Nova Scotia, and at the time the director is a guy named Paul Hemmings, who now runs TNT Hockey. He's their executive director, and then Mitch Kersner, who's doing the Chicago's now, producer, was there, and then it was myself and Dave Randorf was doing the play-by-play. So there was this young guy at the time named Paul Hollingsworth who was from the Maritimes, and I used to call him Hollywood. So in Sydney, they play. You go on the day earlier, and the Red Deer's play. Red Deer Optimist is playing like Dartmouth Subways. Subway's mascot's got plastic wrap around them. It was very interesting. So we're in Bathurst. So the game's on, and I already know Sydney, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. So, anyways, they beat. I don't know. They win 7-6. He scores 6 goals, right? So what you do before the gold medal game, they end up playing Tisdale Trojans in the final from Saskatchewan. So what happens is before the gold medal game, you meet after that game to talk to them. So Paul Hollingsworth says to me, he says, Stan, we're going to go in this room and, we're going to meet the coach. And I said, yeah, no problem. And he said, we're going to meet Sidney Crosby. And I just said, yeah, sure. He goes, you know how good he is? I go, yeah, I heard about him. Yeah, I hear he's pretty good. So we go into this room. As soon as I walk in, Sid sees me, gets up, comes over and hugs me. Hey, Stan, how you doing? I said, good, Sid, how are you? Well, Hollywood, Paul Hollingsworth, he didn't know what to say. He was like, you set me up. So I actually did the game there in Bathurst when he played in the midget finals. I think it was the first time a Maritime team ever got there. And I mean, there's more connections with us. I mean, my first year in Brampton, I had an assistant coach named Robbie O'Brien. Robbie had a younger brother at the time at Western. His name is Andy O'Brien.
Yeah.
And
trainer,
he became Sydney's trainer. So it was kind of, through Robbie and me, and that connection was there too, right? So, in fact, Troy texted me there a week or two ago, and he says, oh, good, you're in Erie now. Well, I'm not too far. He says, I'll come up for a game. I said, well, I'll be coming down to Pitt. So I've been pretty lucky. I've got to, I've been to 3 Stanley Cup parties in Cole Harbour. The Crosby family, Sidney and Trina and his dad, Troy, send my special needs daughter. If you saw, I could send you sometimes the gifts he sends them at Christmas. It's
no kidding.
And we stayed good friends. And I've been to his 21st birthday party at Fox Harbor. And I think what happens when guys are really good players, and they don't know who to trust, who not to trust. So when you've known the players that long, and when you think of our group, we had Jonathan Taves there. Like it was like I don't know. It's like teaching a gifted class. Like, it wasn't hard, right? You get on the ice with those guys, and they just work so hard. And I mean, one of the funny stories I could tell you is we're at the camp, and I'm not going to name the Swedish guys because they're all, a couple of them might be in the Hall of Fame, but a bunch of the Swedish guys were over. And at the end of practice every day, Sid and Jonathan, and they'd grab another guy, would play these Swedish guys 3-on-3. Well, they beat them like, I don't know. We were there 4 weeks. They probably, I don't know, they're 15-0 against them, whatever. And Swedish guys who, just great guys and, very polite and everything. Stan, we want to go home. We don't want to play anymore. And Sid and them, they would, Sid wouldn't let those guys off the ice, like, till he got his pound of flesh from them. So it was a lot of fun. Like, I look forward to the summers to do that. And I mean, one summer I was coaching World Juniors, between World Juniors and Calgary, and doing the camps. And, well, California, we were in California twice. We were in Canmore 1 year. And that was kind of neat because I got to see Andrew Ferentz, who played World Juniors for me. And then we were in Penticton before that. So I had about 7 summers where I did an unofficial hockey school, and I ran all their camps,
How important was that, like, just for your own personal development, just to get out? And I imagine, like, part of it's just as a coach, like, regardless of how much experience you have, I would think you get challenged being around players that.
You know what?
Like,
you had to make practices hard. You had to be well prepared. At times they were a little bit guinea pigs for me too, in the sense I could try things, and I'm going, if these guys can't do it, no one else can. And you know what? It was hard. I mean, if you talk to Sid or Jonathan, they'd probably say, yeah, he worked us hard, but we had fun. So, we go on the ice, or like, say you're in Penticton, you go on the ice, you do your off ice, or in California, you're at Venice Beach with T.R. Goodman, and you're running the beach in the sand, and then you go to UCLA pool and swim in the afternoon. So we tried to make it fun, and we went on trips, and, it was good. I learned a lot, and I mean, I had neat guys that helped me. I mean, at the time, when I was in California, the intern at that time was Judd Moldaver, who then started working there. And, we had, Patty Conacher did a bunch of camps with me early on, and then I had some other guys do them. So, it was kind of neat. And then eventually, when I was to the point where, it was my time to move on from doing that, then, players that played for me like Matt Duchene were in the fold. And I think for a few years, Newell Brown, who's Matt Duchene's uncle, I don't know if a lot of people know that, but it's Matt's mom's brother. He went and did the camps. And then I think the last little while they had Daryl Belfry. And then from there, I think Jimmy Hughes. And when you see what he's done with his 3 kids, why wouldn't you want to learn hockey from him?
This episode is brought to you by Instat Hockey, a company that makes sure no action on the ice slips your radar. Passes, puck battles, dekes, dump-ins, dump-outs, zone entries, and exits, everything. All data is registered, neatly arranged, and visualized to help coaches know their players like the back of their hands. You can access virtually any team, any player in any league. If you're not using Instat, you're coaching shorthanded. See what you need to see, cut it down, break it down, and make your players aware of what they're doing to ultimately improve them. Instat Hockey is your pillar of stronger communication with your team. Visit instatsport.com/hockey to learn more about instant post-game reports and Instat Scout, the unparalleled video analytics platform. Again, visit instatsport.com/hockey to learn more.